So again, speaking about, that's kind of a nice transition when you said, if you looked like at Bush's time in office and these are the same problems. The next thing we're going to move on to is the Harvard Caps Harris poll. And I thought this was actually pretty interesting, something different than we usually talk about, just to see how people are feeling about what is going on in our country. And it was actually pretty interesting. So this poll was conducted May 17th to May 18th, and it goes and tells you, we were weighted for age, gender, region, blah blah blah. So this is the approval and mood of the country. So today, less than a third of voters say the country is on the right track. That's crazy, right? And again,
Not
like,
surprising, but I mean, it's shocking. It shouldn't be that way, but it's like,
yeah.
given the way things are going right now, I
So
understand.
so 31% of the people responded saying that the country is not on the, no, 60% said that the country is on the wrong track. Holy cow. And then I never, I never understood these polls that they don't know or unsure. I mean, if you're going to participate. Is the country on the right track? I don't know.
These are the people that, like, when you ask them what country they live in or what state they live in, they don't know.
Yes. All right. So another thing they asked is 2/3 believe the U.S. economy is headed in the wrong direction, right? So 62% of people, and the best thing is if you listen to the mainstream media, if you listen to certain politicians, they'll tell you that everything's better. We're building from the middle out, bottom up. Everything's building back better, and you're sitting there, and I think most people are you out of your mind? And again, when I saw this, and the reason why I wanted to do this is when I saw this poll, one of the comments on it, and I think it was a good comment, is that politicians are out of touch with their people. They're sitting there telling you everything's great, and not everything's great. So unfortunately, I don't think they look at these things, and I don't know if they're isolated because, again, they get to make their pay raises whenever they want. They get the benefits that they want. So they sit there and like, hey, everything's great, while everyone else is struggling. So
Yeah, I remember listening to I think Milton Friedman had a good point on, like, compensating politicians, where essentially the way that the system is set up currently, politicians get a same base rate plus all the per diems and all this stuff. It doesn't matter if they do a good job or a bad job, as long as they get reelected is essentially all they need to keep maintaining their salary. Whereas he was talking about potentially flipping the model completely upside down, so there's other metrics. So whether it's like GDP or happiness or like something else, it's like the amount of people that poll that the country's on the right track versus wrong track. There's so many other ways that we could compensate politicians to make sure that their values are more aligned with the people and actually improving the livelihoods of people versus just spitting out talking points that are going to get them elected.
Something has to change, though, right? Like something has to. It just can't be you have to wait 2 years or 4 years for a vote to get the people out. Like there has to be more mechanisms in place. I don't know what it is. Maybe there's some quality of life metric or something, but think about this. This is the next poll. They said perceived strength of the US economy overall remains well below 50%. And here's the other thing I wanted to talk about these polls is while these polls you can pull information out and we can sit here and discuss it, you always have to see how they present it. Because what did it say? It said the perceived strength of the U.S. economy overall remains well below 50%. If you look at the chart, it's 62%. So maybe you should said remains well below 60%, right? Because I'm looking back over the chart. The last time it was under 50% was in July of 21. That's crazy. So again, like sometimes these things, they want to put their little spin on it. It's really hard to find old versions of this poll, but I was able to at least find one, and we're gonna kind of compare some things and how they say some things. It's crazy. So
yeah. So just looking at that one real quick. So 70% had thought the economy was strong looking back in 2018. And then going back to today, what was the last number there?
Yeah.
8%.
62, yeah, 38%. Yeah, it's down to 38%. Think it's doing good.
Wow.
So it's fallen. And then remember what happened in 2019 and 2020, right? So now it says half of voters continue to say their personal financial situation is worsening. So yeah, but again, this is the thing: is if you turn on the TV, and you, like you said, you listen to certain politicians, they're like everything's better under this presidency, and everything's better. I'm like, who for who? And again, there was that term that came out of the pandemic, the laptop class. Maybe that's who it is. But I think what's happening is they're starting to lose their job, and they're starting to realize like, hey, the economy isn't that good, and the jobs that I had, that like that day in the life of Twitter. I woke. Remember, did you ever see that video? That lady, day in the life of
Oh,
Twitter,
yeah,
where
yeah.
I woke up and I went to work for 10, and when I was at
Started
work,
my
I got a
latte.
coffee and did yoga, did nothing all day but eat, and you know what I mean. And now that person's probably has to actually go work, and they're probably not making the kind of money that they were making at Twitter, and they realize like, hey, things aren't as good as I thought they were. So yeah, let's
I
get
mean,
to the
you
next.
just go down the list. I mean, the middle class has really been hollowed out here. I mean, look at housing is a perfect example. We're in a cyclical, just like a really bad place in the housing market, where people that bought the house bought it when it was like 20% of the value today, gained equity through all this time. Now all of a sudden you have newer people graduating college, and I couldn't tell you how many people we talked to on the campaign trail that was like, hey, my kids live with me in the basement. They're never going to be able to buy a house in this market. And I mean, that just goes to all the other cost of living things, but it's really owning a home that is really kind of like what sets you out to build a family and
Yes.
really start a life, building a life for your own. And right now they're just out of reach for so many people.
Here's where I wanted to get to in this poll too. Biden's approval has stayed level at just above 40% for the past several months. So, between strongly approve and somewhat approve, he's at 42, 43%. So, when Trump was in office, his hovered around there 44, 47, 48%, right? Man, they crushed him. He's got such low ratings. Now it's like, oh, he stayed level at 40, just above 40%. I mean, I tell people all the time, I go, you're probably on each side, right? On the left and the right. You're probably going to have like 30, 35% of the people that no matter what, they're going to stick with them. They are ride and dies. And then you got the people in the middle, your other 30% that just go, man, I wish you people would get your act together, right? So it's not a good job. It's definitely not a good job. And the problem is, I don't know what we do. 40%, and the people think there's going to be a recession. And the next slide, which is crazy on this, is Biden's approval on management of key issues is weak across the board. The only thing that he's above 50% at handling is reacting to coronavirus, and that's at 52%. And at some points that was around 44% or whatever. And I think probably what's happened is because everyone thinks COVID's over now. They're like, yay, so the optimism is up. But the economy, he's at 39%. Stimulating jobs is 48%. This fighting terrorism, I don't get this anymore. Like, are we still doing that? I guess 46%. Dealing with violence and crime in the country, 39%. How is he 40% or 43% approval if most of his ratings are in the 30s?
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we'd see in this, if we compared to other presidencies too, I think probably the general trend is that almost all presidents, no matter what party, are going to be trending down to the unfavorable job rating
Yes.
quicker in their presidencies, just because I think in general people are getting fed up with politicians earlier than sooner in their careers too. So if you look back at like a Ronald Reagan or even a Bill Clinton, I'm sure, like I remember some of their poll numbers were pretty high for most of their presidencies. It might have dipped a little bit, but never that low. Where now we're seeing politicians dip pretty much unfavorable right off the bat. So I think that just speaks to how how people's standards of living have gone down, and I think that's reflecting in some of these poll numbers if you were to compare it to the past.
So it's funny. So like I said, I found another poll from this Harvard Harris poll, and it was from May 29, 30th of 2019. So I'm gonna share that. So May 29, 30 to 30th. And the funny thing is, right, again, how they say things. I was just looking at this while you were talking to. So GOP approval is just over 40%. And this was in 2019 at 42%. GOP approval is higher now, and they make it seem like, it's cratering. It's not that good. So like the GOP is picking up, and again, so sometimes when you read these things, and maybe that's why they don't keep too many that you can look back on, is to see how these things were worded, to see how they frame the question or the answer to the question. So yeah, perceived strength of the U.S. economy peaked in April, but remains high. So again, like, oh, it peaked in April. It's at 71%, the strength of the economy. Now people at 39%, and they're like, oh, it's holding steady.
Yeah. Yeah, complete shift in the narrative, huh?
Right. So when we can't be honest, and when our media can't be honest, and we have institutions in place that now play to a side, unfortunately, I think what we have to do one of two things, right? We either have to build our own institutions, or we have to, I don't want to say cancel the other institutions, but I think we have to disavow them. If you're not a legitimate, if you're not given legitimate information, then you shouldn't be treated like a legitimate source. Now, again, what you have to do is you have to sit here, because they're one of the only ones right now, is you have to use this data. I understand that. But you also have to understand is you have to have the common sense, the knowledge to interpret this, and then also tell people, like, don't you see what they're doing? And critical thinking, I think, is key, and it's something that more and more people are going to have to learn to do. But I fear in our age of, you can find a Google answer really quick and just search something, or have the Chat GPT figure out something for you. There's a lot of outsourcing of thinking for people, and they need to take a step back and actually say, hey, listen, is this information that's being presented legitimate, fair, and balanced, or is this with an agenda?
So it's interesting you say that, because I was reading a Politico article about so Jim Jordan came to visit Massachusetts this weekend, and he visited the Lions' barn and did an event there. And in the Political article, it was like, controversial House Representative Jim Jordan stops in Massachusetts. And I'm thinking in my head, how many times have they put that label over a Democrat in a political article? Controversial U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren. I bet you it's zero.
Never.
And I mean, it's just like, and that's the thing with the media today. It might not be, factually incorrect, and that's where they try to attack, misinformation. But when they're slapping these labels all over a news article, and it's really just plastered with their own opinion, it's like, to me, it might as well just be thrown out.
Well, it's funny you say that, because like I said, I do a lot of research and thinking, and I 100% agree with you, because every time they talk about a conservative, it's far right. This far right person. And you're like, come on, dude. So I have a new thing. We can tell Jim Lyons, we can tell Jim Jordan to start using this. Maybe we can make this a thing. We're just going to call them the militant left. Every time we talk about them, instead of Democrats, I'm going to say the militant left, Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than what they're doing today.
No, and we have to, because what happens is, by not doing that, they win. So here's another slide. This is from 2019, and it harkens back to what I say about 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, they never fixed immigration. The top two issues for voters was immigration and healthcare.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah. Man, keep electing these people that do nothing, right? Because it's worse now. It's worse. Like you said, in downtown Chicago, you have people saying, build the wall 2024. So do you think that number is going to be lower or higher? I think it's going to be a lot higher. But again, the politicians that we currently have elected, I don't know if they know how to solve the problems or don't care about solving the problems. But, like you said, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I think I've said this on the show before, and I've had this statement that I've made, is the only thing that's changed in my life is everything is in HD in 4K now. You still got the elderly that need help. You still got the people starving around the world. You still got the homeless. You have all these problems that have my whole life have been around and everyone's gonna fix. And it doesn't seem like anything gets fixed. And sometimes it gets worse. So maybe we should try something different. Maybe we should actually try people that want to make a difference. And if you've been in office for 10, 15, 20 years and things have only gotten worse and taxes have only gone up and they're not doing what you want to do, just vote them out.
Yeah, and until we come up with a system where you have politicians of complete opposite spectrums. I mean, imagine AOC and Ted Cruz, for example, getting into a room and actually working together on something on behalf of the American people and both coming out saying that they support each other idea. It's never going to happen in today's environment. It's much more, it adds much more value to them for their political capital, no matter what. If each one of them had a good idea, to bash it to their constituents and say, hey, no, that's that's wrong, and my way is better, and it's like that's going to add, they're going to get more votes at the end of the day doing it that way than if they were to sit in a room and say, hey, this person has a good idea, let's move forward in this direction because everyone's going to benefit.
Well, that's why I like having you on the show, and that's why I like doing a show with you, because there's a lot of topics we discuss and there's a lot of people we discuss and they're politically don't align with us all the time. But I always tell my kids, reward the behavior you want to see. So as the auditor, and we had those discussions about the auditor, and she's doing a good job up at the state house, I will commend her. We might be far away on everything else, but I'll sit there and like, good job. And you know what the funny thing is? I'll get crap for that. Oh, she's a Democrat. I'm like, I don't care. We have to reward the behavior. If we don't reward the behavior of people we disagree with, we're never gonna find the commonality. We're never gonna find the things that we can say, hey, listen, we agree on these things. We can work together, and we need to. That's what we need to do. So, I hope people enjoyed looking at and listening to the Harvard Harris poll and just seeing how the perception that a lot of these politicians have about how things are going doesn't actually meet the reality on the ground. I hope they listen. Who knows? Maybe because it's going to be an election season in the next year, maybe they'll start doing some things to make some changes to make things look better for like the 6 months they needed to look better. But I also think it's funny. And another thing we have to do is sit here and look at how the information we're getting to us, if it's fair, if it's even, if it's trustworthy, or if it's just more propaganda to push a narrative. So, Anthony, have Jim?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, hey, thank you everyone for listening to the Justin Thurber Show. Join us next week. We're gonna have another great show. And again, as always, Jim, thank you very much, and you have a wonderful day.
Thanks again.
Thanks.